welcome back. Today we are going to be looking at the second part of the suit of Pentacles from the Healing Light Tarot. So that's cards 8, 9 and 10, and then the 4 court cards. But one of the things I'm really thrilled about today is that I'm welcoming Kenn to discuss the deck with me. Now, Kenn is a Hecatean torchbearer, but more importantly to me, Kenn is also my collaborative partner on my latest project, the Oracle of the Hecatean Path. So welcome to Kenn, but also welcome to you, and I hope you enjoy as we continue the journey through the Healing Light Tarot. Greetings, darling.
Hello.
We're here. You're a guest on my channel.
I am. First time for everything.
First time for everything. So, and just thank you for being here, and thank you for agreeing to talk Healing Light Tarot with me.
So, thanks for inviting me. I mean, as you know, the Healing Light Tarot's sort of one of my favorite decks, and one that I just gelled with immediately.
Well, I was going to ask you, because I mean, we've got a story, haven't we? Because we met because of this deck, and we've ended up working together because of this deck.
Yeah.
So, I mean, just tell me again how you discovered it.
So basically, a friend of mine owns the local sort of metaphysical shop here in Coventry, and I'd seen your deck on the shelf for a number of weeks, and I kept picking it up and looking at it and going, "Oh, I'm not sure about this," and you know, the title seemed a little bit fluffy for me, and but there was just something about it that just kept me going back and kept picking it up and kept sort of looking at it. And then I think just one day I thought, oh, I'm just going to buy it because there's obviously some reason behind it. And when I got it home and I started looking through it, and I could just see so much depth in the cards and so much scope for projection of, you know, a querent or of yourself into a reading, you know, especially with the use of silhouettes and the, you know, the depth of texture layers and things like that. There was so much that could be seen or could be found depending on how they fell in a reading. And off the back of that, obviously, you know, as you know, I just, there was something about your style that I could envisage my ideas in that style.
Yeah.
But the thing was when I first thought about it, I didn't assume for a second that you were only, you know, so many miles up the road in Liverpool. I thought, you know, published authors and that, most of them are in America, most of them are this, that.
Because so just to let everyone know, Kenn and I have worked on the deck together, which is not published yet, but we will be able to make announcements soon at some stage, won't we? So yeah. But and we discovered that we had a mutual friend, didn't we?
Yeah.
So I mean, so you actually discovered that I was up the road ish, and then we also discovered that we had a mutual friend, and then that's how we sort of exchanged contact numbers, wasn't it?
Yeah, pretty much.
But I'll tell you. Can I tell you a funny story now? Because I've had a lot of people actually approach me and say, I've got this idea for a deck. And I mean, you know full well, because I mean, you've been through the process as a deck creator, you know, having an idea for a deck and actually knowing what's going to be on every card are something completely different, aren't they?
Yeah.
So our mutual friend had said that he'd passed my details on to you and that you were going to call me. And I'm kind of bracing myself for the script, because the number of times I've had to do this about 4 or 5 times. And I've kind of learned through bitter experience of going into collaborations with 2 people that didn't have their ideas fully formed, but thought they did. So, of course, I'm bracing myself for you calling, for me getting my little script ready. And, you know, I kind of let you do the talking, and then I turned around and then I said, you know, I kind of thought, right, I'm going to go for the jugular now, because this is going to close this down. So I think, what did I say to you? I wanted full script, detailed itemized lists of every symbol that was going to go on every card, outline of text. And I'm thinking, right, that's it. I'm never going to hear anything from him again. And there's a pause over the phone, and you just said, oh yeah, that's fine. I'll send it to you when we come off the call. Oh.
Yeah.
And then of course you did, and I thought, oh, this guy means business. So it's funny because I thought, oh, you know, I've kind of brilliant. So I mean, the rest is history, isn't it? You know,
Oh God, yeah.
we collaborated on the Oracle of the Hecatean Path, and yeah, so and you know, there are sort of exciting things to come with that. But it was kind of, I think one of the things that really thrilled me was the fact that I knew immediately, because you'd contacted me because of this.
Yeah.
And you wanted this style. I thought, oh, okay, we can work together. Because I mean, the other thing is with an artist, you know, you kind of have your house style, and sometimes people think that you can just stop creating art like that and start creating art as, you know, as they see it up here. But there was no worries there, because I knew that you knew what I could give, and you were kind of ahead of the game a little bit more than me, because you'd scripted it all out, and so yeah. But so, should we talk through some of these, because we are here?
Yes. Shall we start with that, with the 8?
Yes, yeah. Because on the last video with Ben, I finished off with the 7. So let's go into the 8. It's this was actually, I mean, we found when we were doing our deck, didn't we? There were certain cards that when they were finished, you sort of stand back from the screen and you think, oh wow, I'm really pleased with that. And I had a couple of cards like that in this deck, and the 8 of Pentacles is one of them. And this was a sort of this was quite an easy one to do. It was one of those where what appeared in my head was actually very much what ended up coming out on screen, because I love Pamela Coleman Smith's depiction of, you know, woodworker, metalworker, whatever. It's quite ambiguous. Carving the pentacles, but I kind of had this image of the stonemason.
Yeah.
And I thought, you know, he's not going to be carving a gravestone, he's not going to be carving a statue, but I just had this idea of the sheer wall of pentacles, and I thought, you know, it could be ambiguous, it could be a monument, you know, it could be, you know, it could be anything like that.
Yeah.
And what I wanted to do, I mean, you know, as people already know, every card contains a mandala, and I've placed it, the mandala being obviously the 2 overlapping circles. Oh, and something else I must mention. I have you to thank for this. So anyone who's watching who's kind of seen this round my neck, I've got Ken to thank for it, because he bought it for me. So that stays with me 24 hours a day. But yeah, the mandala is placed very deliberately, and this is the Golden Dawn called this the card of prudence. And I love the way Pamela Coleman Smith translated it, in that she's sort of focused on the prudence of the craftsman, you know, that slow, deliberate, careful, considered process that will eventually bear fruit. And the stonemason kind of just really seemed to sort of sum that up for me, because it's that constant chipping away with precision and, you know, and care, and just one slip of the tool and the whole thing is ruined. And I thought, I was kind of thinking about the mandala on each card is to denote where the healing you know, is to be found in each card. And I realized here that, you know, if you're kind of going through this process in your own life, you know, you're having to sort of go through that slow, prudent, considered and careful process. The healing is up here. And that's why I sort of used the mandala as a halo in this case, because I thought I wanted to really show that it was his care. It was a very conscious process, you know, his care, the application of his skill, the restraint, you know, the slowness of the process. But ultimately it's borne fruit, because I mean, you know, whether it's the face of a monument, whether it is a giant memorial stone, whatever, you know, he's sort of created this object of beauty, and also the precision of the pentacles. And I love this card, because again, I mean, the pentacle is just such a symbol of life, isn't it, and manifestation.
Yeah.
And you know, so yeah, that was my.
Sorry, I think it's interesting as well. You say, like, obviously you opted for a stonemason, which kind of reflects more of the earth element of the pentacle suit.
Yeah.
But although wood carving and all that, they have those same elements. There's just something foundational and
about
solid,
stone.
about stone that kind of encapsulates this card. And I suppose when you look at it at face value, it seems quite a simple card.
Yeah.
But like you say,
so
the use of your silhouette in the card, you can see either somebody taking great care and great interest in their work, or you can see somebody that's finding it monotonous and just grueling just to get through all of this attention to detail stuff. So they say when you start projecting into the card, you find so many more layers of meaning.
And I wanted that. I mean, you picked up, just to remind people, that you picked up the key point of this deck. One of the reasons I use silhouettes is because you end up subconsciously projecting the expressions onto them. You can project yourself into them, and that's something that I very much wanted to achieve. I mean, again, this is the Golden Dawn called this the card of prudence, and you see that very much in the Waite Smith, that sort of prudence, care, caution, precision. It will get you where you want to go. And in this case, it's all of that prudence is manifesting something very solid. In the Waite Smith, it's manifesting 8 pentacles. So taking your skills, taking your vision, and bringing them into real life to manifest. I mean, I got away with using the stonemason because I didn't do it on the 3 of Pentacles. I used an architect on there because I see this very strongly linked with the 3. They're both work cards, whereas the 3 is very much the Golden Dawn called it the card of, the card of work. But I think this kind of takes it one step further because you're looking at the processes behind the work. I think the 3 talks a lot about collaborative effort as well, whereas this is very much what's going on in here.
I think it's interesting as well. Obviously, you link it to the 3, and I kind of see the 5 in between because 3 and 5 becomes 8. So you've got almost the foundational building in the 3 of that church or sanctuary that you see in the 5 that people then eventually find their way to. And then there's almost like a sense of completion when you get to this point. And also maybe all of the stresses and worries and strains that you've gone through here are finally coming to fruition in the 8, because it's a real, it's a manifesting card as well, isn't it? That's one of the things that I really love about it. It's just such a positive manifestation of effort and hard work. So that's my 8 anyway. So we're going to
the 9.
Number 9.
I think this was the second to last card to be finished in the deck. It was because the final card I've just shown you, that was the 5 of Pentacles. So I've not done anything unusual here. The symbolism, the basic symbolism is very, very much the same as on the Waite Smith, because you've got obviously this silhouette of a very stylish and obviously very affluent lady. She's got the falcon on her hand, and she's in a twilit garden. You can see the fountain there. The pentacles are almost like fruits of the branches on here. That was kind of just something that I felt, it was just something that sort of evolved intuitively while I was doing the card. But it's the card of material gain, and for me, I think I've always kind of followed that Waite Smith tradition, whereas you see the 10 is sort of communal gain. This is the sort of card of gain through individual effort. So it follows on from the 8 very much for me. But there's also the thing as well is that I think the symbol here for me is the falcon. She's very much in control. The falcon is her hunting tool, and yet she has him on her wrist. So there is this kind of I love this card because, I mean, there's just this sense of quiet mastery. And I think this 9 is it's sort of an initial culmination. The 10 goes beyond it, but it's almost like, oh, I've kind of arrived on a personal level with this. So again, she's anybody that you want her to be. I found this was a fashion photograph that I basically based the outline on. I don't know what she was holding. I think she was holding something else, and I kind of put the falcon on there, if I remember rightly. I might be wrong, but she's quite close up. But I wanted this. There's a sort of ambiguity. Are we looking at her from behind? Is the hat sort of concealing the back of her head, or is she staring at us? We can't tell. But again, that's part of what I like. And the mandorla, I wanted to encompass the falcon and her head.
Yes.
Because we've sort of got that aspect of the 8 and the prudence and all of the slow, considered hard work. But there's also the mastery that's sort of in there with the falcon. It's almost as if, the falcon is her companion, but it's also a hunting tool. So you've not just got what's going on in here now. You've got all of the things that you've sort of brought into your domain, into your influence, and under your control that are allowing you to realize your dreams.
Yeah, and I think it definitely speaks of like a slight amount of opulence that can be enjoyed after the completion of the 8.
To the hard work.
You can actually take the time to appreciate your gains in this. And I kind of think it's interesting as well, although it's a falcon, that when you kind of take into consideration that level of opulence, the head of the falcon silhouette with that little tuft from obviously its hood, it puts me in mind ever so slightly of a peacock, which is, they have a little tuft. And obviously that's a very ostentatious, very opulent bird. And so that I think that there's almost an element of that showmanship that you can kind of feel proud to sort of show off a little of what you have achieved.
That's very much the case with this card, isn't it? I mean, she's also, if you look closely, she's wearing furs. This is a very grand lady. Certainly I love the Waite Smith card because it kind of ties her into the Empress, because she's wearing a similar gown to the Empress with roses or pomegranates all over it, which is showing, fruitfulness, abundance. But you're right. I mean, she's obviously very wealthy. But also I think the other thing with this is, whereas the 8, you're doing all the work yourself, she has the falcon to do the work for her. And it's kind of, again, it's just moving on to that next stage, isn't it? And with the mandorla, I kind of thought, there is a healing quality to success. We go through all that hard work, we do all that application, we put all that time in. And once you get to this stage where you're kind of riding the crest of the wave, there's almost that tangible sense of healing and liberation that goes on in here, isn't there? When anything succeeds.
And I think that's a very difficult aspect of healing for people to accept, especially today. Even if you are successful, that you can either be quite self-deprecating and sort of shrug off your successes, and also you never allowed the time to sort of enjoy your success because people are always wanting to sort of move on to the next thing because they've got to keep it rolling. Whereas actually you do need that time to sort of stand there, enjoy it, pat yourself on the back and actually
gloat in a healthy way.
Yeah, exactly.
And say, I can enjoy this now. You reminded me of something. What this card sums up for me. When the day we finished the last card on our deck, because I think it was number 23 or something like that, wasn't it? And
Yes.
And the tarot card with the statue. And I can remember dropping the last element into that card in Photoshop, and then we're looking at each other. It's like, oh my God, we've finished. Yeah. So, that's the feeling I wanted to capture. I've got there, and I can, it's not about, it's not about being cocky or arrogant, but there is a kind of certain justifiable smugness in, I finally got to the top of the hill. And but it's kind of, I sort of intuitively created something quite peaceful, but also quite solitary, not necessarily in a bad way. This is all like a secret garden. It's her achievement, and in a way there's only she can fully appreciate and enjoy this, and there are times when that's good too. It's your success, and there's although as we move on to the 10, we kind of see that success shared. There's a certain amount of it that only you as an individual can experience, and that's a healing thing, I think. So that's my 9. Let me just put that here. So moving on to the 10. Oh, you've just reminded me.
Wet your whistle.
Yeah. So
I mean, I think with your 10, when we look at it, it's quite indicative of the Rider-Waite style.
Yeah.
But the one thing I do like about this is I like the addition of the Kabbalistic tree of life, because
it's all there in the Waite-Smith, but it's implied.
But I think because you've added the connections, the way that I then see this and interpret this, that you can be at the top, you can have this sense of having everything, but you can quite easily get knocked down back to the start again. That although these cards are seen as completion, they are actually just cycles.
And they're beginnings, aren't they?
Begin again. And I think a lot of people just kind of get to these ends and think that's it. There's no more work to be done. I can just sit here and rest on my laurels. But eventually the laurels wilt, and you've got to start. You've got to keep going.
Then, yeah. You've kind of got it. I mean, it's very Waite-Smith, but it's when I first got a copy of the Waite-Smith Tarot. I mean, I was 13, and I loved it. I still love it. It's still my favorite deck. And I loved the 10 of Pentacles, particularly. It was kind of one of my standout cards from the minors, because it was a long time before I would learn, anything about Kabbalah. So, of course, it was much later that I discovered that particular arrangement of pentacles on the card was very, very deliberate. I've done this on a couple of my decks now, because I did the same on the Sun Tarot. I've just taken that, but I've made it much more overt and showed the connections. But as you say, it kind of reminds you that you can be at the top and you can kind of plummet back down. But also what I wanted to show was that the success and the gain and the wealth that are on here, it's not just all about us. A lot of it comes from above and is divinely gifted, whether it's through inspiration, whether it's through circumstances conspiring in our favor. But whereas the 9 really concentrates on personal effort, this, to me, the 10 really does emphasize the wider world and wider creation. So hence the family. This is about success and wealth that is freely shared to everyone's benefit, but also it's kind of gain that has come down to us, and that we can't fully take credit for. Hence why I wanted the mandala surrounding the sphere of earthly manifestation at the bottom of the tree. Because everything that's come down, it's only when it reaches here that we can reach into it and take it. That's where the healing is for us. So most of the things on here are quite traditional. I mean, I've sort of loosely followed the Waite-Smith. We've got the 3 generational family. So there's obviously, you can see here that obviously there's the patriarch of the family, the younger couple, and then there's the child. I couldn't effectively in silhouette do a castle scene on this, in the, which I think would have worked. And also I'd already done similar things on the Emperor, and other cards, but I had this idea of really lavish estate. And I was looking through the net and sort of looking at photos of glorious Italian villas, and I saw this photo of this villa on top of a hill, with this row of cypress trees leading up to it, and I thought, yeah, that's it. But again, it's a twilight scene. This is neither, as with every card in this deck, it's twilight, it's dusk, it's dawn, it's the time between times. So it's, again, that's a theme that really just to remind everyone, ties in with the concept of mandala for me. The union of opposites and the healing space in between. But then for me, dusk, dawn, the time between times, that's where we kind of connect with the divine the most effectively. It's where the veil between the two worlds is at its thinnest. And I think that's where healing, it's where revelation, all of those things kind of are more likely to take place. And it just felt very natural for this,
Yeah.
So it's a tableau, but it is very much a picture of how so much is gifted to us from realms that we don't see. But then this really does show how it manifests. And I think the family on this card are actually, it's a very practical manifestation of abundance and, freely given abundance.
Yeah.
So, and it's the Golden Dawn tradition. It's the card of wealth. The 9 is the card of gain. The 10 is the card of wealth, where you can really sit back and enjoy. But it's shared. It's not just for your benefit; it's for everyone's benefit. So,
yeah. And I think I see as well, when we go with the tree motif and the fact that the mandala's at the bottom, I do see this sometimes as also being, when you sort of look at where the healing's coming from, like almost like an ancestral healing, or remembering where you come from, your roots and all of that kind of thing, because that's the foundation which you get, which everything is built on.
It is.
So sometimes it's not as important to focus on the top as it is
on the bottom.
At the bottom, because it doesn't matter how high you build anything, if your foundations are not strong enough or stable enough, you have a tower incident and it can all come crashing down around your ears.
Yeah, you've just hit on something that I've not mentioned as well, because whereas the 9 is very much the card of, you can see it as the card of financial prosperity through individual effort. This also has, this introduces us to the concept of inheritance, wealth passed down through the generations.
Yeah.
So, you can talk about sort of ancestral legacy, both in terms of which, it's not just about money, isn't it? We carry so much that we inherit from those who've gone before us, whether it's personality, whether it's shared family trauma, material wealth, all of those things. But again, the pathways through the tree show us that all of those things follow a path, and that each of us are at different points on that path. So it's a very powerful card with just so many different layers and meanings for me. And it's interesting because when I bought my first tarot decks, it was one that visually just jumped out and slapped me in the face. Probably still does. It's one of those cards that I always, in any deck, I kind of always, you have certain cards that you always check for, certain majors you always go for. But in the minors, I'm always curious to see what the 5 of Pentacles, the 10 of Pentacles, the 8 of Cups, and the 7 of Cups look like. They're the sort of cards that I'm, they draw me. So
yeah.
It's a personal favourite, and actually one that I was very happy with how it turned out. So, yeah.
Okay.
Let's move on to the courts.
Now, yes. So I will hold my hands up and say that for a long time, the court cards gave me a headache.
They do for everyone. They did for me for a long time.
I so struggled to find the you know, to apply the meanings in a reading.
Yeah.
You know, I could do it fine with the majors and the minors, but the minute a court card popped up in a reading, I seem to just get stumped.
Yeah.
And yet, when we look at the court cards in yours, so obviously starting with the page, there's something about the simplicity of them that allows you to sort of tap into the intuition more, because there's, although you use some of the traditional symbolism and the traditional meaning, that it's not quite as in your face as it can be in Rider-Waite decks, you know, where you're looking at what's carved in the, you know, the throne, or what's on his robe, and things like that. And so I did find that from the moment I actually started working with your deck, that I started to make a more sense out of court cards in a reading.
That's made my day, because if that's what it's done, it's job done for me. You know. And also, I mean, I'm just gonna, we were talking about this the other day. I owe everything, my understanding, to court cards to this lady. I cannot recommend this book enough. I got this in my early 30s, and it's a lady called Kate Warwick Smith wrote this. It's still available, the Tarot Court Cards. She, at the time of writing this, she was a counselling professional and practicing psychotherapist. So she comes at the courts from a really archetypal perspective, and I don't think I hadn't come across anyone who'd explained so well just how the courts reflect personality types, and also the personality types come from the combination of elements, you know, within the Golden Dawn system. And that's kind of what I wanted to get over. I think I missed a couple of tricks, because I don't think I really expressed those combination of elements as well as I could have done through the images. But, you know, that's one thing. If I was going to go back and revisit this at some stage, I would tweak the colors slightly to show that, you know, I mean, just as an instance, kings are always represented by, they always represent the element of fire. But then in the case of the King of Pentacles, which is in the realm of earth, you're talking about fire within the realm of earth. Now, I don't think I quite sum that up as well as I could have done on here. Whereas on the King of Cups, I did, because I mean, you've got fire at the base of the card, you've got water at the top of the card. So there's, you know, there's certain things I've changed. With the Page of Pentacles, it kind of doesn't matter, because he is what I call one of the pure element cards, because pages, you know, represent the element of earth, and of course we're already in the realm of earth, so this is pure earth. And he's kind of one of my favorite pages, because when you sort of get into that very, very earthy, pure earthy realm, but also with pages, they are archetypal youth figures, archetypal child figures, figures of inexperience. They're also messengers, so that, you know, they're in the service of somebody else, bearing somebody else's message rather than their own. And archetypally, that sort of works its way through the realm of Pentacles and the realm of earth as not a student, but as an apprentice. This is somebody who's learning, and it's somebody who is following somebody else's direction. But it's earth, it's very hands-on. So, you know, you're talking somebody who is perfecting a craft, you know, apprenticing under somebody else. And I wanted, this is an outline that I'd had in stock, you know, within my Photoshop files for over 10 years before, actually, no, probably about 7 years before I created this card. But I'd kind of always seen him as a Page of Pentacles. You know, there was that sort of, again, holding up the fruits of labor on one level. And you can see in this instance, you know, it's a sunrise, you know, we're sort of at dawn, but it's a sunrise, and it's kind of heralding that new day, which, when you view pages as messengers, that was sort of really important to me in this one. And the light is kind of shining through the pentacle as well. So it's very ambiguous what it is.
Yeah.
But there's almost like a reverence for it.
Mm-hmm.
But then again, there's also that thing, if this page is a messenger, he's really confidently holding the message and the token of the message high. The mandala is kind of quite all-consuming on this card because it's right in the center, and the sun is shining through it, which for me shows that the healing is coming from outside of him. It's the knowledge that allows him to apprentice and allows him to learn. But also there's a sense that he's either stepped through this mandala, or as he apprentices, as he gains in knowledge, he will step through it towards the sun. So that's what I wanted to portray there. And yeah, it's just, he's in it. When you look at it closely, the sun is there, but there's still stars shining in the sky. Mm-hmm. So again, you're very much at that turning point. And I think that's kind of what that kind of youth and experience is about, because everything you learn causes you to turn a corner. And
I like how, not just in this deck, but how the pages often echo the aces.
Yes.
And I know that obviously with your aces, you just focused on the symbol rather than the hand that holds it, whereas in your pages, that hand makes an appearance.
Yeah.
Because and I like the fact that obviously we're starting the court cards with an ace in effect.
Yeah.
But that it's a lot more. There's a lot more personable potential behind it. There's more action going into it than just the possibility of something being there. There's it's either being handed to you or you're receiving it. In the pages of your deck.
The pages are almost like the initiation, aren't they? For me, they're the manifestation of the ace, but it's personified, and it becomes very real. It comes down to earth. Somebody is actually bearing the gift of the ace in their hands. A messenger is bringing it to you, so it becomes very personal. And I think if you're looking, if this card is reflecting a person within your life, or the querent that you're reading for, it's very much archetypally pointing towards somebody who is either physically younger or at an emotionally young place in whatever the reading is concerning. They are starting out their journey. They're on a learning curve. And in the case of this page, it's hands-on learning. It's learning through practical experience. So, but it's also, what I love about this, there's an earnestness about the page of Pentacles. It might actually be a little bit clumsy and a little bit naive, but there is just this wonderful earnest quality about him that is going to blossom into stability. So there is, I think there's with the page of Pentacles, there's that similar promise of stability that you see in the ace, but it's just more immediate, more personable. So there he is. Let's move on to the knight.
Now, I have to say that obviously, despite my general problems with the court cards, it was the knight specifically that caused me the most.
Really?
Yeah, because all I could ever see them as being was just like rushing in, action, speed, reaction. However, the Knight of Pentacles was probably one of the first ones, especially in the Rider-Waite, where you kind of could see that sort of almost monotony and very much of a slower speed. And with the Knight, even in your deck, you kind of there's less of that speed. There's less of that urgency. And again, there's more for the Pentacles. There's more foundational strength. It's coming from a place of action, but it's also coming from a place of, stability. And again, you've kind of got that. The Pentacle is, I can't really focus on mine, but the Pentacle's in the hand.
In the hand, and right at the center of the sunrise. Because for me, the Knight, you've gone one step from the page. The page is a figure of youth, not a figure of experience. So everything that the page does, he has to be directed to do. So hence, the archetypal servant in the traditional system. The Golden Dawn system is interesting because, I mean, the fact that it brings gender balance and gender equality, through having king, queen, prince, and princess instead of knight and page. But poor princess is at the bottom of the pile. Talk about patriarchy. So I kind of like Robert. If I was doing this again, I'd probably go with Robert Place's solution, because he has king, queen, knight, and lady rather than page. So at least he kind of shows there's gender parity there. But with the knight, there is experience here, and he's kind of, rather than just relaying somebody else's message or point of view, he's fighting for what he believes in. So whereas the page would be the archetypal child or adolescent, the knight is the archetypal youth or young person. If you think of, when you get young people who are really fired up on what they believe, they've kind of come into that first bloom of coming into their own ideals, and it's all the fervor that goes with it, and all the chivalry, symbolic chivalry that goes with it. But there is a funny story behind this one. I kind of don't want to destroy the seriousness for people, but this is my Monty Python knight. Because how I came to understand him, Kate Warwick Smith writes brilliantly about him, because she calls him the archetypal guardian, and she sort of infers that whereas, say, with the Knight of Swords, he will dash out into battle, and just cut his way through the battlefield triumphantly. Complete opposite here, because the Knight of Pentacles will just totally root himself and defend the borders.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden I had a light bulb moment when I'd seen it for years, but I went with some mates. It was to a sing-along version of Monty Python and the Holy Grail. And in that wonderful scene where you've got the knight who just stands there and says, "You shall not pass." And of course, they just keep chopping a limb off, and it's like he's got no legs, he's got no arms, and just the torso's there saying, "You shall not pass." That's him.
Yeah.
He will just, this is stubbornness of the healthiest order. What I love about this guy is, if one of these people kind of turns up in your life, this is the kind of loyal friend that will not budge in protecting your interests. And when you've got all the adversity rushing before you, we've all met these kind of people. They just plant themselves in front of you and they protect you. So he's the guardian, he's the protector. This is not the fastest person in the world. Maybe it's not the most imaginative person in the world, but he's so dependable. And that's what I love about this card, because we all need those kind of people in our lives that will just, they've got our interests at heart. They're passionate about defending us, and they just root themselves there, and they're just stubborn. And and again, I mean, that's why I wanted to be looking up at him. The idea with this one was that I would be kind of looking up at this guy, because when he's towering above you, it's a bit difficult to get past, and that sort of, that symbol of protection in the pentacle is channeling the sunrise. So when you're kind of, when you've got someone like this fighting your corner for you, well, they're sort of defending your corner, and you've got that, you're safely behind the horse and the knight. And I just think it's such a lovely card. Of all the knights, there's just something so loyal about the Knight of Pentacles. So again, the placement of the mandala was again quite repetitive, but it was the same thing I wanted to show in the page. But at the same time, it goes one step further, and this is coming from a place of conviction and self-understanding, but just that amazing youthful energy. So yeah.
And I think, you mentioned, the repetitiveness of the mandala placement, but sometimes, a lot of healing comes from one place or a similar place. It's just the level of action that needs to be implemented. So if you don't take the hints from the page when that crops up, maybe you'll take the hints from the night when he cropped up.
Yeah, very much. Yeah. I mean, moving on to the Queen, again, the theme is repeated, but actually on a bigger scale. Because there we go. I've kind of shown the Queen in a Gaian Earth Mother kind of role.
Yeah, I really like. This is one of my favorites.
That resonates with you?
Yeah, and I've got quite an interesting story when she cropped up in a reading once.
Oh, go for it.
Not for me. I'll mention that now. But I had a reading for somebody that was trying to figure out whether she was going to get pregnant. And this card was part of the reading, but the other two cards that were part of the reading were the Emperor and the Empress. So the placements of the cards, obviously, the Empress was the person in question.
Yeah. And
obviously this was her desired outcome. She wanted this. She wanted to be pregnant. And for all of the usual fire and power and virility that the Emperor somehow exudes, in this reading he was flat as a pancake.
Really?
And I was just like, it was kind of a case of, I kind of had to ask the question, it's like, you want a baby, but does your other half want a baby? Is he actually capable of producing a baby? And it was just her bullishness at wanting this outcome. But there was just nothing coming from, obviously, the Emperor's side of things.
Yeah.
It was hilarious. But obviously, you have to keep a professional...
You've got to keep a straight face when you're reading. Wow. It's interesting because several people have said to me, isn't that more appropriate for the Empress? But actually, I think they're very closely linked. I think she's kind of the nearest in the minor arcana to the Empress. And I think she's kind of like a personal channeling. Yeah. Again, you get into the realm of earth. Queens represent water. So for me, water of earth, that's everything that nurtures the earth and makes it grow. Yeah. So I've always seen her as a protective, nurturing figure. She's the kind of protective mother. She creates safe space. I mean, we've all met these kind of people. Mm-hmm. But I thought, what safer space is there than the womb? Yeah. The pregnant woman is the most archetypal protector that you can imagine, and I wanted to show the Queen of Pentacles as Gaia, the Earth Mother. So, I mean, she's rising out of the sphere of the earth. I've used the mandala almost like a birth canal here, but at the top of the mandala is the sun. Yeah. And what I wanted to show there is that, the solar system is the mother that sustains, the sun is the mother that sustains the life of the solar system. Yeah. So you've kind of got a generational thing here. You've got Gaia, the Earth Mother, but you actually see her mother up here. And it's one of the reasons that I showed the sun as a feminine aspect in this deck, because don't get me wrong. I mean, we have wonderful myths of the sun as a masculine deity, and a masculine archetype, which is totally valid and spot on. But I think the sun has feminine aspects that are, very often overlooked. Yeah.
And so again, there are cultures that had female sun deities and male moon deities. The one off the top of my head, Sunna, and from the Norse pantheon, but from our perspective, we assume that all sun gods are masculine and all moon gods are feminine. Feminine, yeah.
I mean, if you look closely here, you can see this sun, but also there's quite ghostly. There is a sort of map of the solar system around it with the orbits of the planets. And I wanted to kind of have that sense of this being one of those orbits. So, but you've got our physical sun up here, but you then have a divine sun shining through the mandala. Mm-hmm. So divine energy coming. And I wanted the mandala to be a birth canal to show that she was very much born as well as somebody who will give birth. Mm-hmm. So there's that kind of cyclical, generational sense of protection and nurture. But she's also, when you look closely at her crown is the branches of a tree. So he is a tree. You know, she's very much an object of growth herself.
Mm-hmm.
So everything that's nurturing, caring, protective. You know, and I've shown the sort of water of earth here because you've got like a divine waterfall crashing down onto the earth, and of course, obviously, the earth itself. You know, you see the oceans.
Yeah.
So she is an earthy figure, but it reminds us that earth is saturated with water. You know, which is what brings it to life and actually allows it to generate life. So that's my queen.
When you mentioned about the you know, similarities to the Empress, but obviously in your deck you didn't focus on the sort of fecundity and pregnancy of the figure. But when you sort of think about it from this point of view, with the Queen being more Gaian, when you look at the Empress, obviously she's more
divine. She's quite ferocious.
She's more divine, but she's, because of that, you know, that Venusian symbol.
Yeah.
You know, she's got the femininity, and she's got the love and everything else. But as you said with previous cards, this is about the personification, the physicality of these things manifesting in our lives.
Yes.
So like the Empress can be more theoretical, whereas this is more practical in application.
Yeah. She is, and more human. You know, the Empress is the sort of wild power of nature for me. You know, and that can be benign a lot of the time and nurturing and protective, but it's also wild. You know, when you think, I mean, the power of the earth, you know, tidal waves, you know, the way sort of forests, you know, when buildings are abandoned and forests encroach, and then, you know, gradually nature will tear human constructs down. You know, she's awesome and she's incredible, but she's also wild and unpredictable. Whereas she's more consistent, she's more straightforward, you know, and very much on the human level. You know, even though there is a certain amount of divinity in the way I've shown her, you know. So I love this card. I love the Queen of Pentacles. She's one of my favorite courts, you know. So we've only got one card to go.
No, we're on to the
fabled
King of Pentacles.
Yes.
And it's interesting that you mentioned earlier about you know, you said about the elements, and you mentioned the fire of earth.
Yeah.
And when I re-looked at it, when you mentioned that, I suddenly realized, well, you haven't got, you know, literal fire in this, but your use of the gold tones with the green. Gold as a mineral kind of is the fire of earth. You know, it's yellow, it's a solar metal. So in a roundabout way, you kind of have,
I suppose I've got it
without realizing it.
Yeah, I mean, there's a kind of feel of it. I ghosted in some very, very dynamic textures into here to give a sense of, but I think I should have gone a little bit more orangey gold in places, but it's a minor point. I mean, in this instance, I've put the mandala is slap in the center of the pentacle, which is all, you know, with huge pentacle, you know, glowing white hot behind him. But you see, that's the pentacle is his power, the pentacle is his realm, but also as king of that realm, that's where his healing is. And it's interesting with this, again, I love this king because there's a similar distinction between him and the King of Swords as there would be between the two knights of those realms. I mean, the King of Swords, you could say, is the kind of king that would go out to his subjects to dispense justice. But with the King of Pentacles, he's the kind of king that sits in the throne room and invites you into his court. You know, he's very much at the center of the realm. And again, it reflects that earthy stability. So what I've done is, I mean, I've paid homage to, there's a lovely detail in the Waite Smith that a lot of people don't pick up on, because if you look at the King of Pentacles in the Waite Smith, his right foot is actually resting on a stone effigy of a bull's head. And I wanted to pay homage to that in a slightly different way, in that you can see the bulls behind him, but then again, it's very much that symbol of earth, that symbol of stability. There we go.
Teeny one, but I don't think it's
not
going to show up on that enough. But to be honest, I'd never noticed the one under his foot before.
Yeah. That's what I love about the Wade Smith. I mean, when I discovered that deck when I was 13, it's like I'm 56 next month and I'm still finding details in it. I spotted something in it a couple of weeks I'd never noticed before that somebody else pointed out, you know, and it's very, very detail rich. There's a pair of bulls behind him. So they're very much his spirit animals. They're his totem, you know, but they are that sort of symbol for me of fire of earth, because there is something very, very stable about this king. There's something very solid and stable about a bull, but if the bull gets angry, you know, it's volatile. So it's interesting. There's a lovely essay in the booklet that goes with the Thoth Tarot. If you buy like the full size version of the Thoth Tarot, the booklet that comes with it contains Lady Frida Harris's essays from the original painting exhibition. She puts it beautifully, because her and Crowley actually relate to, when they're talking about fire of earth, they talk about the sort of depths of the earth and molten lava waiting to erupt, you know, and how it's sort of how that molten rock swirling around fuels the tectonic plates and the movement of the earth. That's him. So, you know, he may not move from his throne room, but his influence actually stretches very, very far, you know, and there is subdued power under that throne that's waiting to erupt. We've all met people like this, you know, those amazing, calm, stable authority figures, but you do not upset them, because actually all of a sudden that what appears to be benign, you know, if necessary, will erupt. And that's, for me, that's him. You know, there's a grace and a serenity about this king, but at the same time the card is swirling with energy, and also the bulls behind him, you know, it's almost as if he is holding them in check. You know, he could very easily stand out the way if his wrath was incurred. So, but again, this is a powerful figure, but he's also a gentle figure where needs be. But the healing is within the realm, and I wanted the pentacle to be his crown, but also for the pentacle to contain the mandorla. I think as well, I mean, there's that whole thing I wanted to show here with the pentacle as the symbol of, you know, it's so many things. It's 5 different directions. It's the, you know, the 5 extremities of the human body. You know, it's almost like the Vitruvian Man, isn't it? You know, with the head, the outstretched hands, the legs. You know, it's almost a map of the human body. So it's a map of the earth. And yeah, it's the very earth that he represents the healing properties of. And it's the stained glass window behind him. It's the halo around his crown. It can be any of those things. But then his throne room is the woodland realm. That's something that was, you know, this is very much that, you know, it's green energy, you know, which I love about all of the Pentacles courts. You know, I kind of tie them in with the Green Man and all of that sort of thing. So yeah, maybe he's not as symbolically rich as the Wade Smith, but I hope he's kind of elementally more obvious. So have we just finished the Suit of Pentacles? I think we have, haven't we?
We have. That went quick. Time flies when you're having fun.
If I talk to you really nicely, will you come back and do a couple more of these, or one more at least? He's frozen.
Oh, I'm sure I can be persuaded.
Oh, that's lovely. Ken, thanks. It's really, really appreciated. And it's been a joy talking through this with you, particularly talking through with a workmate and a fellow deck collaborator. So, yeah, thank you so much. And really has. And thanks to everyone who's watched. And I will look forward to seeing you for the next one. Take care.